Get this up here. All right, can everybody see that? Good. Perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about the business insurance basics today. Um, our agenda, I'm going to give you a little introduction. We're going to talk about general liability, a business owner's policy and how that differentiates from a GL, commercial auto, workers' compensation. I'll give some final tips on things I think you should look into. And then, of course, we'll do the Q&A, which is the part I'm looking most forward to, because I want to know what y'all have questions about. Let's jump into it. A little bit about me, Chesapeake native my whole life. I've been a producer at Centerville Insurance Agency for 7 years, going on my 8th. I am a certified insurance counselor. I've earned that designation a couple years ago. Husband of 8 years to Callie, and a father of a year and a half to little Miss Emma, and that's a picture of us right over there at an ODU football game. We love to tailgate, and we've been season ticket holders for, I think, 3 years now. So always a fun time with the family. So what is a CIC? Certified Insurance Counselor Program. It's a nationally recognized and highly respected insurance professional designation. All CICs possess extensive knowledge of crucial insurance policies that really lay the foundation of comprehensive insurance and risk management practices for both the individual and commercial policies. So essentially, I know too much about insurance. That's really what that means. So let's jump into general liability. A general liability policy is basic. It is going to be ideal for contractors without a property exposure. So I'm thinking small contractors like landscapers or painters, your firefighters or police officers that have that side gig, a lawnmower or two, or maybe they go paint. The coverage provided is essential to protecting against loss and is considered basic. So I'll go into a little bit of an example of when some of these coverages would apply. Liability, think slip and fall, think your customer's property. Maybe that landscape contractor shoots a rock through the car windshield or the window of the home. General liability is going to cover that, things of that nature. Products and completed operations. This is coverage for your products that you sell and your craftsmanship. I like to give the example of someone who sells skincare products. This is your coverage for the product and how it performs based on what you say it will do. This is coverage for, let's say you're doing a tutorial and maybe you get it in somebody's eye and something of that nature. Products and completed operations, how you do your job and the products that you sell, covered by a general liability policy. Personal and advertising injury liability, liable, slander, those are all personal injury claims. False advertising, that's going to be your advertising injury. I've had this pay out most frequently as the result of Google reviews and a upset business owner going at it with a customer that left a poor review in the comments, and they say something they shouldn't, and now they're being sued for libel or slander. This is typically where that pays out. And then medical expense coverage, it's another line of defense for injuries, all falls under the umbrella of general liability. So then what is a business owner's package, or more commonly referred to as a BOP? It's all the same things that the general liability policy offers coverage for, but now we have the introduction of property coverage. This is ideal if you own your building or have a good deal of business personal property inside the building that you rent. Larger contractors with mobile equipment, so like lawnmowers, ride behind snow plows, things of that nature. Businesses that have office space rented or that they own, and maybe they furnish that unit. This is where the business personal property, the building coverage, the contractor's tools and equipment coverage, that's going to come from a BOP, whereas a basic general liability policy may not extend those coverages unless you upgrade. And then a big thing that comes now with a business owner's package are endorsements. And I have one very important one here highlighted, and that's cyber. Cyber is one of the biggest exposures to any business that interacts with their clients and their employees electronically. Think payments, contact information, electronic signatures, personal data, payroll. I could really go on for more time than we have about cyber. So I'll just wrap it up into a story of a claim that I had pay this out. I have a large commercial client that is a logistical company for all the commissaries. They help the commissaries fill the orders that they need to stock their stores and run the logistics with the distribution companies. They don't do any of the delivering, but they help out with the logistical side of things. It is not uncommon for them to stroke checks of $10, $15, $20,000 to their vendors. It's also not uncommon for their vendors to change their bank account information. They tend to do it on a quarterly basis as an added security measure. One day, my client got an email that said, "Hey, that last payment of 15,000 some odd dollars and cents didn't come through. We forgot to tell you that we changed our routing and account number. If you could, please wire it to the new routing and account number provided below." Again, nothing out of the ordinary from what they normally do. The only difference is that it was a hacker who changed a 0 in the email address to an O, and they wired it to their bank account. That is a cyber loss. And if you have a business owner's package that has a cyber suite, you can be reimbursed for that $15,000 that you lose, $20,000. You can also be reimbursed if your customer's data has been stolen and the expenses you incur to help get that data back for them. Cyber is so important in today's day and time. Commercial auto insurance. This is one of the most exposed aspects of a business, and mostly because business owners don't understand what makes a vehicle business use. So real quick, I'll just touch on some of the things that commercial auto will cover. It'll cover your owned autos and your non-owned autos. Owned, of course, being a vehicle of yours that's in your name, that's registered to you. Non-owned being vehicles you borrow or rent. Think maybe you need to go to Home Depot and rent one of their U-Haul trucks, or you need to go to U-Haul and rent a U-Haul box truck. Your commercial auto will cover your non-owned autos. Hired autos, these are autos of your employees or volunteers. Think sending an employee on an errand for you, but they use their vehicle. If they get into an accident while they are on that errand, your policy will cover under the hired auto portion of the policy. And then property in transit. If you're a contractor and you do not have a commercial auto policy, and you're pulling a trailer with all of your expensive equipment and you get into an accident at an intersection, your property in transit is not covered. Your general liability policy will stop the second that property goes into motion and is being pulled behind a vehicle. And if you do not have the trailer and the truck insured on a commercial auto policy, you could lose all of that property and be out the money it costs to replace it. And then I have this twice and bigger the second time. Business use is defined broader than most people think. So I am going to show you the next 2 slides, direct verbiage from one of my carriers on a personal auto insurance policy. Okay. The first thing I want to show you is in the definition section of this policy. Down here at the bottom, it defines business to include trade, profession, or occupation. Okay, so the insurance company has now clearly defined how they determine what a business use vehicle is in a personal auto policy. Anything you just included in a trade, profession, or occupation. So now we're going to go to the exclusions section of this policy. And it says we do not provide liability coverage for any insured. And then we go to point 6, when employed or otherwise engaged in the business of selling, repairing, servicing, storing, or parking. Now, this is specifically set out because so many people have side gigs of mechanic, right? They'll help people change their tires or their oil, or maybe put on a new transmit or a new starter, or whatever the case may be. This is a very specific. So then we get down to point 7, and it says maintaining or using any vehicle while that insured is employed or otherwise engaged in any business not described in Exclusion A. Well, what type of business was not described in Exclusion A? What they already defined as any trade, profession, or occupation. So this is clearly showing you, and this would be very close verbiage to most all personal auto carriers in our area, that if you are using that vehicle for any type of business use, they're not covering any loss that you have. Super important that if you're using your vehicle, even if it's a Corolla, even if it's just a little Corolla, If you're using it to perform duties of your business, you have a massive exposure if you're leaving that on your personal auto policy. If there's a logo on that car, if there's a phone number on that car, if there's a wrap on that car, if you use it for tasks or errands or to transport equipment for the business, that exclusion is going to apply and you could be very exposed. Some auto carriers on the personal level will have specific classifications that they will negate the exclusion. So, for example, an insurance carrier or a realtor, they can keep their vehicle on a personal auto policy because it falls under the umbrella of what they would consider low risk business use. So, with that information and to wrap up the commercial auto insurance, I would just suggest you call your current insurance agent or give me a call and tell them exactly what you do for work, exactly how you use that vehicle, and let them decide whether or not the policy would grant coverage if you're in a loss while using it. Um, putting a vehicle on a commercial policy does not negate your ability to use it personally. If you put that Corolla on a commercial auto policy and you get into an accident on the way to Food Lion on Saturday getting your groceries, the commercial auto policy will still pay. It's really just the exposure of commercial use that the personal auto policy doesn't grant. That's our biggest concern. Workers' compensation insurance, required by law with 3 employees or more, and employees include owners and officers, even if they're excluded from the coverage. That's a big one that gets people. Well, I asked to be excluded. Well, that's fantastic, but you also have 2 other employees, so now you're at the 3 and you're required by law to have it. It is based 100% on payroll with annual payroll audits that can result in credits or debits. And the penalty for not having it, if you're required by law to have it, you meet the definition, and you don't, you will incur a $250 per day penalty for each day of noncompliance, up to a maximum of $50,000. Big, right? I like to say that workers' compensation is the purest form of insurance, just because, again, it's based completely on payroll using a remuneration system. So that's basically the cost per $100 of payroll. So, for example, $100,000 of payroll for a carpenter with a remuneration rate of 10 makes his remuneration 1,000, and 10 times 1,000 is 10,000. So his workers' compensation premium for $100,000 at that rate would be $10,000. When he does his audit, if it comes back that he did $9,000 or $90,000 in payroll, they're going to give him $1,000 back because he should have only been charged $9,000. If he did $120,000, they're going to ask him for $2,000 more and increase his payroll on the next policy period. And it goes that way every single year. So again, it's really just based on what you're doing. Even if you don't have employees, you should have a ghost policy. A ghost policy is a policy that is there, but there are no employees that sit underneath of it. And I'd like to give 2 examples of how broadly an employee can be defined in the workers' compensation world. Let's say you're a painter and you're on a job site and you're up on a ladder, and another contractor, let's just say he's the trim guy, he's walking by and you ask him to hand you your air compressed paint can. And in the process of doing that, he gets hurt. The second you asked him to do something for you, he has now become volunteer labor and he's your employee. If he gets hurt, he can come after your work comp policy and it will pay out. I will give you another example that happened to me specifically. My mom owns a daycare, and I used to live right across the street from it, and the batteries on her keyless entry went out one day. And she had 2 employees and 3 families sitting in a parking lot at 6:15 in the morning, and they couldn't get in. So she called me and asked me to go around back and get into the daycare and let them in from the backside. I decided to go in through a window. She told me there was a stool nearby that I could use. She did not tell me that the stool was from 1985, but I used the stool. And when I went to launch myself into the window, the stool shattered and I cut my stomach on the windowsill as I fell. If I wanted to, I could have claimed on her workers' compensation and it would have 100% paid me out every damage I incurred, because the second she asked me to do it, I became a volunteered employee of her company. So it's always a good idea to have it, even if you don't have employees. but in the state of Virginia, you're not required until you have 3. Final tips and takeaways. I can't express the commercial auto exposure. It's the number one exposure we see here at our office. I'm sure any other commercial agent would tell you that as well. So many people using their personal vehicles for commercial use, and they're just opening themselves up. And I would also consider maybe looking into life insurance, especially if your business is the sole breadwinner for your family. If something were to happen to you on the job, life and workers' comp's not going to take care of that. Disability and accidental is not going to take care of that. You might want to look into getting some life insurance to help your family make ends meet or be set up the way they were when you were here. I can help discuss that. I'm sure your current agent sells life. You can discuss it with them as well. And that's my final takeaway. So now we'll open it up to the Q&A section.